Welcome to the video on beginning HTML. In the previous video, we set up a web link to an outside URL. In this video, we're going to set up a link within the same page. And so this will kind of be like a table of contents where we'll set up a link to an article that's lower down in the page. And so we're going to use all the tags that we've been doing in the previous videos. So first, let's set up our table of contents. Okay, so first we're going to create an unordered list, and you will remember that from the previous video that we covered that. And then you will remember we have to put in list elements inside that. So let's create the list tags, and then we're going to go ahead and put that over here, give this some space, and close that. Now we need to create our anchor tag. Remember, our anchor tag is our link to wherever it is we want to go. It could be an outside page, which we did in the last video. But in this case, we're going to link down to a section in this page, and that will be the article that we are writing about. So let's go ahead and create our anchor tag. Remember, we keep that open. And remember, we have to use the href attribute to give the anchor tag a destination. That is, where are we going? Where are we linking to? We're going to put a quote, and then we're going to put a hashtag, and the hashtag is what tells the anchor tag that this is going to be linking to something within this web page. And that something is going to be called birds. And so we will call this birds. Then we will use another quote and another angle bracket. And then we're going to type in some text, and it's going to be the text for this link, which is birds. And actually, let's make that birds section. And then we will close the anchor tag. And let's delete a few spaces here. And let's go ahead and create another section. So we can just copy and paste that. And we will have a section on ducks. And that's all we need at this point. So we have our menu all set up to link to lower sections in our web page. And now let's go ahead and create those sections down here, and we will actually, let's create some break tags here just to make this a little bit realistic. And let's go ahead and use the paragraph tag to create some text. And now we've got to create another anchor tag because this is what we are linking to, and I will show you how these hook up in a minute. And we will do name equals quote birds. And then we'll use another angle bracket. And here's where we'll put in some text. This is the section. Actually, let's say this is the article about birds. And we will go ahead and close this with an anchor tag. And close this P tag as well. Now, this name attribute right here links up and corresponds to this href attribute here. This hashtag is what connects to this name attribute. So that's how it works. We use this hashtag, and it'll look for the anchor tag that matches birds, this attribute name. So that's how this all links up. And let's go ahead and create our other section. And we will just say this is a section about ducks. And you know what, let's add a ton of breaks here so you can see exactly how this works, because then you'll actually see the jump that occurs. So let's just put in some massive breaks here. Assume that this is a very large web page. And then let's take all those and go down and copy those in between. Okay, good. Now let's go ahead and save this. And let's open this up. And we click on the birds, and you will see that that jumps to this article. And if we go back up here and hit the ducks, it jumps to ducks. So, okay, and I'm going to show you how to add an image to your web page. Now, I want you to create a folder on your desktop, and in there, put the image inside there as well as your HTML code. And that way we don't have to worry about specifying a location for the image. It'll automatically be rendered when we add it to our HTML code. Now, if you want to add it to another location, you can do that. You just have to specify the directory where it's at. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up the source in Notepad. Now, the first thing is let's create a header tag. Remember, we used that from the first couple videos. And let's create a header for our image. And we're just going to call this Washington, D.C., because that is where I actually took the photo. Now let's create a paragraph tag to encapsulate everything. Now for an image, we use the img tag. And the attribute we will specify is source equals, and then quotes, and here is where we will specify the source of our image. In this case, it's just an image.jpg, and as I said, we don't have to actually specify a directory because it's in the same directory as the source, so the image will be found. And then we give it an angle bracket. Now you might be wondering why I didn't have to give a closing IMG tag. And this is one of those tags that doesn't need a closing tag. And that is because we're only putting this image here. There's no other content that has to go in here. No text or anything like that. So let's go ahead and save this. And we will minimize this now. And let's go ahead and render it. And there you can see we've got our image, we've got our nice header describing where this is, and so that's how you put an image into an HTML document. We're going to continue on with images, and specifically today we're going to cover resizing and sizing your images. So we'll use the same code that we did from the last video. And if you deleted that, I will open that up now, and you can go ahead and hit the pause button and just copy this. And we'll continue on now. So similar to the last video, make a folder called HTML source and put the image and the HTML file in the same folder. Now before we move on, I want to make a couple points. First is you usually use JPEG for your best images. So if you have a beautiful landscape that you want to display, you should use a JPEG image. But if it's something like a logo or some little artwork that you're doing, you probably should use a PNG file or a GIF file. So that's kind of the general standard. And of course here I'm using a JPEG file because this is a nice wonderful photo of Washington, D.C. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up the source now, and I'm going to show you how to resize an image. But actually before we do that, let's open up this HTML document in IE. And there you get an idea, that's just a huge image. So if this was a realistic website we were doing, we would want to actually change the size of this image. And I will show you how to do that right now. So let's go ahead and reopen this up in Notepad. And between this angle bracket and the ending quote, we're going to go ahead and put in a parameter called width. And we're going to say that equals, and we have to put this in quotes too, 200. And that is pixels. So 200 pixels. And then we also have a height attribute. And so we will go ahead and make that 200 as well. And let's do a save. And let's reopen this. And you can see it's much smaller now. Now that might be too small. We could increase that, to 400, whatever. But you get the idea. Now I want to point something out here to you. That resize that we just did is done within the browser. So let's imagine that I'm sitting at a remote computer here at some other location around the country, and this source is on the server. So this is being sent to my browser. The resize gets done on the user's browser. So what I'm saying there is the original image is sent in its full size. So if we take a look at this image, you'll see it's still a huge image. So that will get sent to this browser, and then the browser will read that HTML document and resize the image. So the point I'm trying to make here is that that's a lot of overhead for a huge image like that. So I'm saying if you're making some minor adjustments to the image, you can go ahead and use that width and height attribute. But if it's an extremely large image, you may want to just reduce the image itself in one of the Photoshop editors. So if we went to, for instance, Microsoft Paint, we could go ahead and resize it right here, and we wouldn't have to put the attributes in the HTML code. So that is how that works. Okay, I just wanted to talk about nested elements. And what nested elements are is putting an element inside another element. It's that simple. Now, the only element that is not inside another element is the HTML element, and that is called the root element. But then we would say that the head element and the body element are both nested inside the HTML root element. And within the head element and body element, you can obviously put other elements inside those elements. So the P element here is nested inside the body element. And we would call this the child element and the body element the parent element. So the body element is the parent element and the P element is the child of the body element. That's how that works. So it's always good to put the starting and closing tag inside the parent element. So what we don't want to do is like start a closing tag here and then put the closing P tag outside the closing body tag. That's called a mismatched element, and that is not a good idea. You'll start to encounter a lot of problems if you do that. So just remember that. Always keep the elements nested inside each other, and keep in mind that parent-child relationship. Okay, as I said, this was going to be a short video. That's it. I will see you guys in the next video.